So this is Akiba Mays, and she started off helping her older sister's kids homeschool. And then she started homeschooling her own. She's actually a certified teacher.
Cool.
Yeah.
It's actually been a little bit over 5 years since I've been homeschooling. I started off helping homeschool my middle school age nieces, and then I went on to homeschool my own daughter. So in this video, I am going to just be spitting out all of the homeschool advice I would recommend based on having homeschooled for 5+ years. I'm 16. It is important to have a village and share the load. 17. Taking a village looks different for different people. 18. Homeschooling often happens in seasons. You're going to have times where you are uber productive and then times where you're just kind of chilling, and that is okay. 19. Carve out time for yourself every day, even if it's just 30 minutes. 20. 2 hours of homeschooling every day consistently is more than enough time to get the whole curriculum in.
Yeah. So
2 hours? My opinion? 2nd grade.
I was gonna say, why do I gotta be in school almost 8 hours a day?
Oh, no, so that's a whole different thing. No, absolutely. In homeschooling,
Your 8-hour day is 4 hours.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because so understand that a traditional school environment, whether that's a public school or private school where you're looking at that whole, you're sitting in a classroom the entire day, you have built-in time for moving around and you're dealing with a group of people.
Getting everyone quiet, getting everyone packed up, sat down, get up, move to the next one. That's half the day.
It is. And then you also, when you're talking actual instruction time, there are going to be people in that group where, 50% or so of your class, 60% of your class might all be in the same spot. But then you're going to have 20% that are kind of ahead. They're going to be bored. 20% that are kind of behind.
They're going to be frustrated.
They're going to be frustrated, but then the teacher has to work on that 20% that are kind of behind before they can move on with everybody else. Otherwise, they just get further and further and further behind. So there are things about teaching in a classroom environment, in a traditional school model, that winds up being additional time.
So
It's
you've
just
been
part
in a
of the system.
classroom ready to go, and the teacher had to stop and do review, and you just sat there through it. That doesn't happen
Like if
because you're ready to go already.
And so that's actually an educational outcome for homeschooling. A lot of times you wind up, if somebody is focused on, pushing through a standard curriculum that's like aligned with state standards, things like that. If somebody's focused on that, they're focused on getting to college. So a lot of times homeschooling is going to result in a better educational outcome.
Yeah.
It's a real simple reason. All of the educational research, everything that we've done, there's not a lot of understanding on exactly how to close achievement gaps necessarily because it's such a complex thing. There's so many different factors that go into it. There's one thing. There is one metric that time after time in every research that's ever been done, no matter what kind of traditional environment you're in, whether you're in Scandinavia, whether you're in parts of Asia, all of the educational research comes back to student to teacher ratio.
Yeah.
So when you're homeschooling, if the parent's actively involved in the homeschooling, you're sitting down and you are a 1-to-1, 1-to-2, 1-to-3 student to teacher ratio.
Right.
You get to focus very individually on exactly what that student needs, and that is always going to produce a better educational outcome. It's just something you can't really replicate in a traditional schooling environment. And when you try to kind of hyper-focus on that, you slow the rest of the class down. And that's a lot of your time during the day.
Right.
So
where we left off was
2 hours
her
of homeschooling
saying
a day.
2 years of homeschooling a day. Yeah, maybe. I feel like kindergarten, 1st grade, 1 hour a day, because there's other things you do that are just naturally learning.
Right.
1st grade, 1 hour, 2nd grade, 2 hours. I'm going to go to 3rd grade and say 3 hours. At that point, we can hold there 4th, 5th, and 6th, because our goal in those grades is gone from the child learning and exploring to the child doing assignments.
I mean,
We
yes.
have to get them to transition into showing them the work, because then when we get to 7th, 8th grade, we need to go up to 4 hours. Honestly, the law is 4.5 hours a day.
Right. Now, but understand the law of 4.5 hours a day includes all of the other learning you're
Right. It
doing
includes
that's not in seat
taekwondo.
time.
It includes
Going grocery
museums.
No, if you're...
I hear that. I just don't buy it. They can sell it.
Okay, so when you go grocery shopping, if you're doing math while you're doing it, and so every item you're picking up, you're making note of how much that is, and you're making a game out of how close to the total can you get. Now it's learning.
See,
time.
I went to public school, and I was just my mother's pocket calculator.
Right.
No, like we were on a budget. There were, at any point in my home, from 9 to 11 people in the house. And we had to spend $100.
Right.
And this was 1984. And Mom would be like, let's go, start counting.
But here's the thing.
And I'd be like, man, we're at 90 and we haven't gone to meet yet. And she'd say, what are we putting back? And then I'd start subtracting. I mean, that's cool and that's smart, but I don't want people to rely on grocery store math because I'm a snob.
So grocery store math is amazing for elementary age students, and it's the perfect way to get them.
You sold it. I'm buying it.
And I think it's also a good way to not have them act out in the grocery store, unless they're just like, oh, I don't like math. And like, well, you determined that young, okay. But like, I've seen some people with the kids, and sometimes kids just like to feel involved. So maybe that is something that will help making grocery shopping easier.
I don't remember having my kids do it, but my kids were jostling each other in the grocery store and knocking down old ladies.
Oh no! Well, maybe if they did some math.
I mean, so here's the thing: ways that you can make everyday life educational as a homeschooler can also be used if you have traditionally schooled students.
Yeah.
I mean, that's part of how I learned math as a child as well. So there are absolutely the ability to go do the museums, the ability to talk about,
that's how we got here.
So I mean, spending time doing regular life things and talking about them.
We spent
or
every
educational
Friday
experiences
in a science or art museum in my kids' middle school years, and that counted toward that time.
Right. Watching documentaries.
But when they get to high school,
Yes.
you need an hour. I promise you, you need an hour of math, an hour of science, an hour of social studies, an hour of language arts, and some time on foreign language. You gotta. If your child's like, I want to be a doctor, I want to be a lawyer. This is what you have to do. Now, does your child want to be a designer? Maybe we roll back a little bit of time in history and science, and we're spending more time in art. But
or maybe your history is about the history of design.
Right. And so, time spent is going to show up on those standardized tests. It's going to show up at the college.
Agreed. Yeah.
Well, what do you do when, like, let's say if they change their mind, like they're like, oh, I want to do art, so then you use the curriculum to like gear it towards that, and they're just like, you know what, art's not for me. I want to be a lawyer, but now it's time to go to school, like college.
I was an art lawyer student in high school.
So here's the thing. If you've been studying your history and you've done it through an art history lens, and so you've been, because you're still covering all of your major historical events.
We've got two kids who have latched onto design through the history.
Right. And so we're still studying all the same events. We're still reading all of the same literature. We're zeroing in on things that talk about the fashion of the time period and why that fashion was the thing of that time period. And, you know, why did we go from dresses that trailed on the ground to being right up above the ankle? And what were the sociological things happening? And, you know, then why did dresses go up to the knee? And why did women stop wearing hose and stockings in World War II?
Why they start drawing lines on their legs?
And why were they drawing lines on their legs? So all of that you can still study history, and you're still getting that same research focus.
Especially if you use our history, because we really do the experiential
because you dive in, and so if you've done all of that research, it's really easy to pivot to a different concentration in the same subjects.
Facts.
So
not run yourself crazy with extracurricular activities. Those kids will be fine at home. 22, do not try to do school at home. Don't try to emulate the school environment at home. It's not going to work. 23, you do not need to have a big classroom or any sort of setup in order to teach. But 24, you should have some anchor charts and some staple pieces around to reinforce learning.
Yeah, so that kind of feeds into what we were just talking about with the grocery store math, with the going to museums, with the experiencing life. Homeschooling is not done at home. That's probably the biggest myth of
I've
homeschooling.
gotten a few homeschool kids in the college with scholarships. None of them stayed at the kitchen table.
Right.
None of them. Now, one did an online program in addition to the other things that she did. And that was because she had changed gears halfway through high school. The school was pushing her to the arts, and she was actually a scientist. And so that last year and a half, she just like zeroed in. She's about to graduate. College.
And
Go to grad school. And
she got an award.
She is Glamour Women in STEM. So, and my point is, of all the kids that I've helped, none of them sat at the kitchen table.
Right.
The one that got into the most colleges didn't go nowhere near the kitchen table.
Right.
He did not.
Not at all.
He was in every theater production he could get his hands in. He was at BroadwayCon interviewing celebrities. He was writing for theater magazines.
He was doing reviews, interviewing actors, interviewing directors.
Right.
And like the writing portion of his portfolio was all of his professionally published work.
And he just starred in
Fat Ham.
Fat Ham.
At the Alliance.
At the Alliance Theater, so.
Yeah, no, homeschooling's not done.
So yeah, no, we're not sitting at the kitchen table. We're just paying kinship. We're paying attention to our kids and trying to figure out who they are. And as we figure that out, taking them out and about and meeting people and seeing people and doing things.
So, 2 points to that. That can be expensive.
Which is why I only want to spend 4 to 5 hours at home, because
Right.
we still need those hours out in the world.
Absolutely. And some of that can be done in the car if you're driving. from place to
No,
place.
we had books that lived in the car.
That can be expensive. You can absolutely pay for some of these experiences. It can be done fairly reasonably, though, also. Be on the lookout for free homeschool days at local museums.
Oh, absolutely.
Homeschool opportunities.
Reciprocal
from,
museum memberships. If you just buy the memberships for the museums in your area, when you travel, they will let you in free because you have a membership to a related museum.
Yep.
Yeah.
So be aware of those. Go and find out the opportunities at your local library. A lot of them have, not only do you have a kind of movement in the library systems to have maker spaces and, equipment that you can go use there.
We need to go check that stuff out.
We do.
Because this is brand new. Because you used to belong to a makerspace and there
We
was
did.
a monthly fee, and now
And now you can
makerspaces are.
get them at the library.
Yeah, that's kind of neat.
But then also you can a lot of times check things out depending on your local library system. Like I know City of Atlanta, they have a library checkout that will get you discount tickets to Shakespeare Tavern. So if you want to go see Shakespeare
go
being
over
performed
there.
on stage, you can go to the library and check out this pass that will help you get tickets to go see a
That's
show.
amazing. Yeah.
And so there are all kinds of interesting
Homeschooling
passes.
is as expensive or inexpensive as you need it to be.
Right.
My best advice is to do as much free things as humanly possible. But as you see your child grow and start to take on experiences, decide where they've reached a wall where free things will no longer help, and start paying professionals to mentor them, put them in classes or whatever.
Right.
But recognizing when that child has outgrown. I had 2 piano teachers come to me and say, I can't teach your child piano anymore because they've surpassed me. I don't know. I think
25
when we're
books
done
are
with the
your
video, we're done
friends.
with
In my opinion, if you focus on just making sure your child can read, it makes homeschooling so much easier. Once they learn how to read, they can practically teach themselves. So I would personally say focus on that early on, because
I was so grateful that my children knew how to read before I started homeschooling, because it took me a long time to learn how to read, and I
Right.
was terrified. So I was so grateful that by the time we decided to start homeschooling, that my kids already knew how to read. Now, did I have to intervene? Yes. During the summer, my daughter got through kindergarten. When I was growing up, you learned to read in first grade.
Right.
But when my kids were little, you had to read in kindergarten. And by the end of kindergarten, my child couldn't read nothing. And so I bought, I think, Headsprout. Because she had been on Reader Rabbit. I wasn't going to do that other reading thing that everyone, like, the magical reading thing. Because I'd seen relatives do it. And the kids were faking the reading. You know what I'm talking about. I can't think of it. And so we bought Headsprout and taught her how to read in the summer. But I was just so grateful that my kids could read fluently.
Right.
Because that's horrifying.
But also, don't just assume that because your child could be an independent learner, that they are independently learning, even if it kind of looks or feels like maybe they are. Like, by the time they get to middle school, kids can talk a real good game. And they might make you believe that they're doing things that they're not. So make sure that there are, even if your child is independently studying and you're not staring at their screen the whole time, make sure that you're getting evidence of what they are doing so that you catch when they sort of fall off track a little bit, because almost every child's going to fall off track at least once.
I don't think that a child should be homeschooling in their bedroom until they've taken the PSAT.
At least.
You know what I mean? We took our dining room table out of the dining room and moved it into the great room. And because I was working for websites and they were working, we just sat at the table in front of the fireplace with the TV to the side. And we just worked. I was working, they were working, we were all working.
I wish I'd done more of that.
And I knew they were working because I'd be typing away and then I'd feel someone staring at me. And so I'd finish typing and look at them and they'd ask me a question. Like, you have to. Now, Mir uses a phrase called warm thigh.
Yes.
And now you're sitting on the same side of the table. And so now you can see what's going on.
The child stays
the
focused
screen.
because they have that warm thigh right next to them. And so now they're doing the thing.
But I love these babies, but I had it easy. We just had computers.
Right.
These kids have 3 devices before they turn 15. How could they not be tempted?
And distracted.
It's ridiculous. So anyway.
As number 26, kids learn a lot on their own. If you provide an educational environment, it is almost impossible for kids to not learn something. And of course, you have to encourage curiosity. A big goal of education is really to teach kids how to learn, and not necessarily about the content that you're teaching them. The content, of course, is important, but it's more important to teach a child how to love learning and how to access information that they want to know. 27, you can homeschool anywhere, in a van, in an apartment, in a house. But in my opinion, I found it's easiest to homeschool in a place where your child has the ability to also be outside. Because once the learning is done for the day, what is your child going to do all day? So just really consider where you are living. And it's okay if you are in a place like we are now in this season where they are stuck inside for many hours of the day. There are other things you can do. We go to the YMCA, we go to the park. For me, it's just easiest to homeschool in a place where kids can have the ability to be outside independently. 28, it takes some time to find your homeschool group or clique. So don't worry and don't be afraid to try out different groups and to even move across the country to find groups that are more in line with who you are. 29,
Across the whole country? Okay.
I
mean, she did. move
And
across the country. She was in California with her sister, and now she's like in the Northeast again.
I admire that.
Mm-hmm.
That's not
You
something
can just
that's
go
accessible
one
to
city
everyone.
over.
Yeah, that's not necessarily accessible to
But
everyone.
understand this. There are different educational thoughts in different parts of the country.
There are.
When I first started homeschooling, a friend of mine told me to buy a plane ticket, and we went to California
Okay.
to an unschooling convention. Definitely not for me. I mean, some of the things I learned there and some of the people I met there were fascinating, but that was just far too loosey-goosey for me.
Right.
And if that was it was San Francisco area, if that was their way of thinking, then if I lived there, that wasn't going to work for me.
Right.
Now, I'm from New York. Would I have done well in New York? I would have done amazing in New York. Unfortunately, I lived in Atlanta. And I made the best out of it. It was a little oppressive. Because the way I think and the way people in this general area think or thought at the time did not jive. I was literally one of these things that don't belong here.
Right.
And I just had to kind of forge my own way. And as a homeschool parent, I was very solo. My kids weren't solo. My kids could make friends with anybody. But my experience was very solo as a homeschool parent.
Yeah, I believe that.
Yeah.
I mean, and I would have loved to have world schooled
But
my
would I
kids.
have told my husband, get a job somewhere else, let's go?
Yeah, no, that was my response to that statement. Is like, well, I mean, I'm going to live where our paycheck is, and I'm not going to upend my entire family.
But she has the ability to move her paycheck.
And that's nice. That's fabulous if you're in that position, and good for her. But also, I recognize that that's not common. I would have loved to have world schooled my kids.
And I did find you and honestly, if it wasn't for COVID, you would have.
If it wasn't for COVID, we absolutely would have
because you were heading in that direction.
I was headed in that direction. And for, again, homeschool philosophies, world schooling is education through travel. And spending extended periods of time in communities in different places in the world and getting to learn what those communities are like. And
we were weekend warriors until
that
the kids hit high school, and I was like, it's time to get ready for college.
Right.
We were weekend warriors from 2nd and 3rd grade until like roughly 8th grade.
And there are communities for this, because the conversation here is about finding your community. You can absolutely find online communities for all of these kinds of things. And so you could, like, if world schooling is your aspiration and you want to travel around the world and spend 3 months here or 6 months there living immersed in a culture, there are online communities that can help you with that.
And the reason that this works, though, and the reason that I was okay is because I found my homeschool compatriots online.
Right.
I found my homeschool friends, my homeschool parent friends online, and so I was fine.
Make sure you know homeschooling law in your state and the surrounding states. The state and the county will try to make you do some ridiculous things that are not required by law. That's where you need to step in and be like, hey, I don't have to do that. 30, your family may be hesitant or against homeschooling at first. Whatever, they'll come around. Just ignore them and keep it moving.
They'll not only
31,
come around,
people
they'll
are
try and force you
constantly going
homeschool their
to...
kids. Because that happened. They will not only come around, but they will try to move more children into your home. Be strong. Be strong. Because if you start watering down your homeschool experience for other kids, then your kids are going to get lesser experience.
Right.
You bring more kids in, you've got to be very mindful about that.
Because back to that student-teacher ratio.
That.
Be testing your kids. That may come from family, and it also comes from strangers. Just be prepared with a statement beforehand that you are ready to jump in with and support your kids. It could be, hey, it's not appropriate to test my kids. Or you could do it kind of jokingly, like, hey, before they answer that, why don't you recite the preamble? Be prepared and don't take it personally.
No, I let people question Jordan. Because Jordan would be like, and then she would answer the question, then she would ask them a question. And they couldn't answer it. So I was like, here, take the precocious one.
And that's a great thing to train your kids to do. Because if
she's my child and she just started saying some really wild stuff.
Well,
like,
people shouldn't ask things like that. People shouldn't do that to children.
What was the wild thing she said? I can't remember. Oh. She'd be like, oh, we homeschool. Oh, how do you homeschool? We just watch TV all day. She would say opposite. And people would be staring at me and I'd be like, Jordan. She'd be like, tee. And then she would just ask them a wild question and they'd be like, Because she was loaded with shark and whale questions anyway. So, anyway.
32, your friends, family, and even strangers are always going to have this feeling that because you homeschool, it's like you making a statement that they're a bad parent. They are just projecting. Ignore it.
This lady who lived around the corner from me, very nice family. Her husband up and left one day, but anyway.
Oh,
whatever. So very nice family. The boy was so well behaved.
Okay.
And they were age of my kids. And, you know, they saw us homeschooling through the years. And she'd ask me questions, and I'd tell her. She asked me what workbooks she'd be using during the summer. Not a problem. And then 9th grade-ish. And she's like, you know, I looked into what you're doing, and I think it's a really good thing. But my child needs to be around other children and socialize. And so I have a lazy eye. I have an astigmatism. And so when you have a really bad astigmatism, it's work for you to keep your eyes focused straight. But every now and then, if somebody said something to me that surprised me, that eye would go back to its natural set point. It would just go. When you start on me, my eyes do a weird thing. And so she was talking to me, and my eye went, because I was very insulted. And she just like walked away. Don't say stupid shit.
Okay, Jordan.
Yes. I don't know what the point was.
I mean, we were talking about strangers who project
that.
themselves into a situation.
But we were just having a lovely conversation, and she said, well, my children need to be around other people and socialize. And my eye went, yeah. Because that's what it does.
Yeah. No, that is absolutely going to happen. Everybody, at some point, you're going to have somebody say something.
Yeah.
That would just
I had a woman
wild.
argue with me in the grocery store line. She was a cashier. And it was 2 days before school started. And Jackson and Jordan were at it. They were just like, doof, doof, doof. Throwing each other on the ground, body slam, elbow, like they were going.
in public?
Oh, yes.
In the grocery
Yes,
store?
absolutely. And I'm like, please, old ladies, please move out the way. My children are wild. And then somebody's like, aren't you glad school started? And I was like, no, I like my kids. And they were like, your kids are crazy. And I'm like, yeah, they are. And then this teacher's like, the cashier's like, well, you know, what school do they go to? And I'm like, they homeschool. And they're like, well, there's a perfectly good private school over here, and there's a perfectly good private school over here. And I'm like, no, we're good. Meanwhile, elbows. They were being insane.
So everybody around you is looking at them like, I'm not sure good means what you think it means.
And then she goes, you know, I'm just like, you know, I really want my kids to be kids right now. And these were the early years. This was like 4th and 5th grade. So they were just being really bad. Really, really bad. And I was kind of laughing because it was a little wild. And like, I think we all three had on a taekwondo uniform. So they had come from taekwondo. That's why we were fighting. And then she goes, I'm like, no, I'm good. You know, we're going to homeschool. And she's like, well, I just think it's very selfish to homeschool when you could be helping out in the schools. And I was like, Madam Cashier, because if you mess with me, I'm going there. And I was like, the situation we were in, I couldn't wait. I couldn't wait for it to fix itself while I helped in the schools. Like, my kids need my full attention, and when they're graduated, then I would help other kids, and here we are.
Yeah.
But
yeah, no, I've absolutely heard that argument that, you know, you owe a responsibility to your community for your kids
I
to
owe
be
responsibility
in
to
the
my
public
kids
school.
first.
No,
That doesn't make sense to me.
individual students do not have to experience educational trauma to buoy up their peers. That is a ridiculous argument, and there are other ways to go about improving the community.
I agree.
I still don't understand that argument.
But also be sensitive to the fact that because you are homeschooling and doing amazing, wonderful things with your kids, and they're at work during the day, or they're not homeschooling their kids, they may actually feel some kind of way about that. So consider their feelings. You know, after a mass event is probably not a best time to say, oh, I'm so glad that's why I homeschool my kids to be so they're never in harm's way, because they may be feeling like, well, I can't homeschool my kids, or I'm not homeschooling my kids. Does that mean that I'm bad? Just be aware, okay?
Yeah, no, I gotta actually jump in on that one. It's also, not only is it ill-advised to be like, I'm so glad that I'm homeschooling my kids when, you know, whether it's a government response to the pandemic, whether it's, you know, some incident of school violence, whatever that happens to
Homeschooling
be.
did not help us during the pandemic.
Homeschooling did not help us during the
No.
pandemic. Which, I mean, well, to some extent,
It didn't completely derail the kids, but emotionally they were not okay.
Emotionally they were not okay, because you need interaction with other humans. But as far as educational priorities, that didn't change as much. Like, we weren't pivoting as hard.
Right.
So I will say that. But incidences of violence, other
happen
issues can
anywhere.
happen anywhere. So
It can happen in your house.
It can happen in your house. It can happen in the mall. It can happen in a movie theater. It can happen anywhere. Well, and they also have not necessarily had the opportunity to compare themselves to their peers in the way that somebody in a traditional schooling environment has.
There's no real comparison for it.
And
Homeschooler
so-
to homeschooler.
So even students who are higher achieving than they think that they are have insecurities about, well, I just don't know that.
And so in the realm of homeschoolers, and I'm gonna pat myself on the back a little bit, Jordan and Jackson, probably more Jordan. Very high achieving.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But also, I want to tell people,
kind of more on the elite side. We weren't trying to go to Ivy, but we could have.
But I also want to put a disclaimer in there too. Like, public schoolers, like, we have to be more compassionate in that.
Well,
regard,
public schoolers
too.
know that they're elite. Homeschoolers don't know from Adam
But public
how
school,
smart they are.
Public schoolers don't
When
know
they're
that
brilliant young people,
Not all.
they have no idea whatsoever.
But it applies to public school as well, because sometimes your system is trash, and then you go up against somebody else from another school system, and you're just
Oh,
like,
yeah.
That's why competitions, academic competitions, are so important. So you're exposed to people from different regions.
Right.
And
Because you
I
might
see-
think that you're hot stuff in your school, but then
And somebody
once you
comes
meet
in,
another school,
Godzilla's
oh,
you.
no.
Yeah.
yeah, and I experienced that quite a few times with like all state choir and
I
solo
experienced
ensemble.
that with mock trials. Because
No,
I'm
yeah,
in Yonkers,
mock
and
trial,
we're going we're in Lower Westchester by the Bronx, and we're going up against kids in Ardsley, kids who live by where the Clintons live.
and then
we're
when you're
eating
part
us.
of organizations where you
Yeah.
have to meet with the other organizations, it's like I'm a president of like Tri-M, so then we're meeting with all the others, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, that SAT word is a part of your daily vocabulary. Oh, you know, so we also have that. And then going into a college where there's different people from all over.
See, college is
But-
supposed to level that.
But also, I wasn't as compassionate as I could have been towards her situation. Because, again, I'm not saying that it's
But
just
how
on
did you
her.
know to be compassionate? How would you have known to be compassionate?
Well,
she came
what-
off very self-assured.
True, but also I was older and had been through a lot of other things. And I was, but even though I was having my situations and I didn't know how to go through that, she's also away from her support system for probably the very first time for that long
Ever.
amount of time.
Ever, yeah.
And so something like, oh, I love this place and this is whatever, even though, yes, how she packaged it wasn't great for me, that could have been, that's a moment that she's sharing and that makes her feel comfortable.
That was something we did on purpose.
What? Oh, to send her away?
She couldn't be closer than 2 hours to home. Because her support system, she wasn't going to grow as an individual.
She would have
Like,
been
she was
back
planning
every
on
weekend.
dropping off at her homeschool program every Thursday, and I was like, bro. That's why she didn't get a car until sophomore year.
Oh!
We waited on that car. I could have bought her the car the year before.
Right. Everything has a method. There's a
Yeah,
reason.
no, we're crazy. All right.
Often. Those books, manipulative toys, they start to build up very, very quickly. Get rid of those books, okay? You read the book, get rid of it. 34, don't buy anything unless you have a written plan on when you will use it and how. You don't want
I'm just gonna have to take a moment and say that I don't understand the
We're
concept
sitting
of getting
amongst
rid of
at least
books.
$1,000 of at least 1,000 books. So
At least.
whatever.
I don't understand the concept of getting rid of
Books
a
are
book.
forever.
Okay. Yep.
36, take pictures, okay? This is going to help you
Yes.
remember all
Yep,
the wonderful
chronicle.
things that you did throughout the
Quick.
year so that when you get to the end of the year and you're
Yeah,
feeling like, oh,
smart.
did I do enough? All you have to do is look back in your camera roll and you'll say, yes, well, look at all the stuff these kids did this year. Because your kids will make you feel like they have never been out, they have never gone to any field trip, they have not learned anything the entire year. Then you'll be scrolling back like, wait a minute, we went to Korea this year.
cost me
Yes,
so much
from my own experience. 37, outsource some classes, even if it's just one subject. I felt like because I was
Spanish
a
too.
self-contained elementary school teacher and I taught everything, I felt like, okay, well, as a homeschool mom, I'm just going to teach everything like I did in school. Woo-wee. Not while I'm trying to make money and run the household, okay? It is just so much easier to allow somebody else to teach some of the subjects, whether that is art or science. Outsource where you can.
So another important thing for that, especially if you're homeschooling through high school and you're going to build that portfolio that you're submitting to colleges, having different instructors in that portfolio gives credibility to your educational
It
journey.
does. It absolutely does. One homeschool teacher or one homeschool program looks okay, especially when some mom's teaching some and the program's teaching some. But multiple, to have different teachers' names signed onto different things, gives your child's portfolio credibility because all those A's make more sense when they're not all coming from one instructor.
38, write a budget. 39, stick to that budget. 40, get exercise. Even if it's you getting up in the morning and walking for 5 or 10 minutes in the brisk air, it's a stress reliever. Homeschooling can be stressful. Make sure you're getting exercise.
Homeschool was not good for my children's physical fitness. I'm just going to put that out there.
That's fair,
So
but you
fight.
also don't prefer the outdoors.
I don't like the outdoors.
And now I can't even get her to go to the
We
park
did.
with me.
We did swim. They swam all the way up to almost licensing. They did taekwondo before that, and then after that they fenced. But constant access to the fridge is not always the best idea.
Also fair, which is another good reason to leave the house.
Yeah.
41, be a leader. If there is a resource that you want and you can't find it, or you're wishing there were a co-op in your area, start one, form it. This type of homeschooling in 2024 is totally different from homeschooling 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. We have so much at our fingertips, and the field can only grow if you help it grow. So it doesn't matter if it's not perfect at first, just do it.
There's nothing easy about that. That is all.
That is why they can follow you guys. This is time to
Yeah,
plug.
so, I mean, again, we have a video about that. We have a video about building a homeschool nonprofit. We have a video about sustaining it. So if you are going to undertake an organization, please check out those videos.
And
'cause
having
that
a
will-
mission and vision will reset you when your rug gets shifted.
Yep.
Absolutely. There are going to be times when you're like, why am I doing this? Please understand, don't just jump in and go, I can lead the thing. Prepare your soul and understand why you were doing it, and then understand what your goals are in doing it. So when things shift, so when other personalities come in and push and try to massage so that it becomes best for their child, you understand where your set point is supposed to be, and you can give a little but also stand on your principles and why you were doing it, because I promise you there's a program out there that's more for what they want.
Right. So, if you are looking to start something, my recommendation is to be involved in something that exists locally if you can first. That's going to help give you perspective. Don't try to change what another organization is doing just so that it fits your model. But learn from what they're doing and then step out on your own if you truly cannot find something that meets your needs.
Agreed.
Another way to find things that meet your needs, though, if you're in a urban area, if you're in a suburban area, if there is a lot of activity, Doing a couple of things over here and a couple of things over here might bridge that gap without you having to actually start something yourself, because everybody's not cut out to run their own program.
No, and it takes a lot of time and energy, so be careful, and money. So be careful with resources that you aren't taking resources from your kids
Right.
to do things for the greater good.
Right.
And 44, make those tasks feel fun. You're giving your child a responsibility because they're growing older. You have to learn how to cook your own food. And kids love cooking. Kids also love cleaning, as long as it's
They love
not
it
an
until they don't.
overwhelming task.
And no, my kids never loved cleaning, but
My kids don't love cooking and cleaning.
I had a housekeeper,
Don't
so
do
that's
it.
my bad. And then when I got rid of the housekeeper, they were like, "How dare!" I was like, "Y'all are becoming little slobs." They liked cooking for a while. I didn't like food poisoning.
Oh,
That's fair.
Someone did poison me.
That's fair.
She did eventually learn how to cook Chinese food.
No, my kids have never enjoyed cooking or cooking.
No one can do everything. If you look at any given parent, if you were really given a deep look inside their life, outside of what you see on social media, I guarantee you there's going to be part of their parenting that sucks. So give yourself grace. 46, if you believe you're not qualified to teach your child, just remember in the beginning, teachers aren't qualified to teach the children either. The first few years of a teacher's career is a hot mess. You are going to become a better teacher as you go on.
That's
Just
true.
always keep learning. 47, if you get behind, make a plan to catch up. 48,
So, oh, no, that's hilarious about the teachers, but also accurate. Here's the thing.
The master's degree helped us.
The master's degree did
And
help.
and so, we've just given a lot of ammunition that we didn't just mean to give.
Oh?
Yeah, because people say, well, how can these parents with high school diplomas or college degrees that have nothing to do with homeschooling be teaching?
Right.
Because it's a smaller audience, because you just can.
So, here's the thing.
But because we're teaching dozens of children, the master's degree helped us with class management and
It did.
and routine and
so
structure.
we both have a master's degree in education. We decided to go get that because we're running a nonprofit, an alternative educational nonprofit.
Mm-hmm.
We are teaching classes of kids. Largely, the master's degree education was about classroom
It's
management.
all about classroom management.
And
all
it was
of
about how to work with multiple kids at a time.
That's all it was about.
You're not doing that
And how
if you're
to
just
integrate
homeschooling your
something
kids.
we already knew, which was how to integrate reading and
Right.
things into the other curriculum
Yeah,
and things
so
of that nature.
there was a large portion of the master's degree stuff that we kind of already knew, which made that kind of simple. And then
yeah, I
there
mean,
was,
we aced it.
what we didn't know was things about running schools and running classrooms and administration. And if you're homeschooling, that's not information that you need.
No.
So here's the thing. Homeschooling in this day and age, if there's something you don't know, you have the entire internet at your fingertips.
All the YouTubes.
So as long as you, as an adult, as a parent, understand how to separate fact from fiction and find quality sources, and if you feel like maybe that's not your strength, we've got a great book for you right here. As long as you know how to do research, you can teach yourself anything that your child wants
You
to know,
can.
and then turn around and teach your child.
That was the advice I got when I started homeschooling in 2003. You're smart. You can teach yourself, and then teach your child.
Yep.
Now, there were things I decided I didn't want to learn, and then I outsourced it.
And that's where you go find a class that teaches it for you.
But absolutely.
Yeah. And yeah, if you feel like maybe research is something that I didn't get a real good solid foundation of, and so, maybe I need to bone up on that, 2-hour read right here.
Yeah, several people have told us that this is an amazing book for the beginning of teaching, probably not just history, but the humanities.
Right.
I'm gonna have a couple more. Understand that homeschooling is hard for everyone. You are not the only one feeling how you're feeling. You're not the only one having a bad day or feeling inadequate. This is just temporary. Reach out to your village, join homeschool groups, express how you are feeling, because I guarantee other people are feeling the same way. That's the only way that you can grow, become better, and make this process a more relaxed and wonderful time.
Yo, homeschooling is hard. homeschooling is so hard. And don't go cry to everyone and tell them homeschooling is hard, because they will tell you why your children should either be beat or in public school. If you know that what you're doing is right, you tell you pick and choose who you cry to very carefully.
Yep.
Because then they will come and harass you in all of your weak moments. Don't give people you choose. Pick and choose who you share your weak moments to.
For an hour 45.
Yes. I highly recommend you go find her channel and check her out. Her name is Akiba Mays. I did a video on my personal channel some while back called I think Black Homeschoolers You've Been Sleeping On. And I highly recommend you explore her channel, explore her sister's channel. Can't remember her name. Maisley. Sister's last name Mays, husband's last name Lee. And just listen to what different homeschoolers around the net have to say. You'll see things that we all say in common. You'll see things that we all say differently. And that's kind of where you need to dig it and figure out where you stand at that point.
Agreed.
And I love this camera. You look amazing.
I did. Yeah, no, this is kind of fabulous. This is kind of fabulous. We need this set up.
Yes. Okay.
So, thank you for having us. We enjoyed being your guests.
Yes. Thank you.
And
Thank you, Shalonda.
Thank you guys.
Thank you for introducing us to Twitch.